Hello and welcome to another joint webinar with Alex Solutions. My name is Yoke from the Alex marketing team, joined by my fellow co-host Roberto. Together, we're excited to have with us a seasoned expert in the realm of data, Eugene, the founder of Data Quality Works, to have a conversation about a few important aspects of data governance today, but mainly how to make data quality conversations tangible in organizations. So to start off the introductions, let's get to know our presenters a little bit better with the question, if you weren't working in data, but could use your skill in any job in the world, what would it be? So Eugene, I'll pass it over to you.
Right. Well, I think this question reminds me of one of these school essays that people are asked to write. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I have a pretty strong recollection that when I wrote one of these, I think I said I want to be a librarian. And I think that's probably the role that I'd want to play with all of the skills I have now. There's really something magical, I think, about getting things organized, making sure people find them. And I think to a large extent, that's actually what we're doing with Data Quality Works, right? So Data Quality Works is data governance and data quality as a service consulting firm. So we're helping companies actually implement data governance and data quality. So we're sort of where rubber hit the road. Once you have the policies, you really need to make sure you know what your critical and sensitive data is, you know where it's coming from, you know what the controls are, you want to be able to profile and make sure that data that you're using is of high quality. And as you can tell, the cataloging is really quite a big part of it. We really want to be able to build that catalog so people can find information. And then I get a lot of inspiration from library and information science. So yeah, librarian, absolutely.
I love that. And I think that it's a really beautiful collaboration to have right now because Alex is obviously named after the ancient library of Alexandria. So perhaps this is meant to be, Eugene. And I'm also very passionate about libraries. I used to be a librarian growing up in high school, and my first ever job was in a bookstore. And my alter ego actually is I've always loved storytelling. I love anything to do with stories. I love to tell stories. I love to listen to stories. And I've always wanted to be a graphic novelist. So maybe I'll come out with a data governance graphic novel one day if it hasn't already happened. But that's what I wanted to share. And Roberto, over to you. What about yourself?
I guess my answer is not as exciting as Eugene's, but I've always had a passion for sport. I've always had a passion for cars. So combining the two in another life, it would be motor racing. But right now, I'm very enthusiastic about data, and until that dream is on delay. So right now, enthusiastic about data, always excited about what's new in the realm of data. Excited to explore it.
Now, Eugene, I'm curious because when we were planning this webinar, you mentioned that sometimes data owners and stewards find it difficult to truly care about data governance, right? So why is that? Why is there a lack of care in data governance?
Well, I think first thing to say is that data governance is really no different from any any other governance. So if we think about investment governance, it's really the same thing. Try and understand why you're doing governance, what are your goals, what are your decision-making structures, what are your roles and responsibilities, what are the standards and what are the processes you're trying to set up, right? And all of that is actually quite boring, right? So, I mean, it's a lot of policy work, quite detailed. So what I found actually making it tangible and what gets people to care is the language of risk and showing some very tangible impacts with data quality. I think there are several reasons for it. So one, why would language of risk resonate? So I think it's risk aversion bias to start with. So humans are risk averse. That's why people keep to their losing investments for longer and sell their winning investments quicker. So people react to language of risk a lot more readily. Second, I think, is the recent regulatory action. So if we look at fines that APRA levied in the past 5 years, it's a lot of them to do with data quality. So one of them, as you probably know, was for Westpac entities, another one for BNK, another one for equity trustees. And I think the last one is you can tie the data being used and their quality to something very tangible in the business. If you show that not having, say, right addresses impacts reporting to APRA, and you show exactly how it impacts, and you show that, say, certain percentage of addresses is wrong, and that impacts some of the critical data you're reporting to APRA, that gets people to think, and it becomes very, very tangible. So I think that's really what I've seen. And if you stick to that, I saw people kind of starting to care. Actually, that makes me wonder. I mean, you have a lot of clients, big banks and probably smaller organizations. What language have you seen resonate, and what do you use to get people to care?
Initially, I was thinking that language of risk is sort of like the carrot and the stick theory. That was what I was thinking before. And it's so easy to think about that, do it right and you get the carrot, do it wrong and you get the stick. But I think it's a lot wider than what we see is the lag in adoption rates that's happening right now. And that's why it's challenging for people to get their team members and organizations to care about data governance. So we're seeing the same thing. And that's why later on in the conversation, Roberto will share a little bit more about what Alex can do and how we're on a mission to really empower organizations. And so in your experience, are some major and minor tangible risks you've seen to do with the timeliness of data, Eugene? You've mentioned APRA fines earlier. Those are some huge facts, very, very big things happening in the last couple of years, and huge fines that we want enterprises to avoid if possible. So that's examples of some major tangible risks. But what are other risks that you've seen in your experiences that you can share with the audience today?
Sure. So I think that the fines that we talked about, they are related to timeliness of data and typically delay with reporting. So if we explore this a little more, there's certainly different factors. One of them, probably major one that I've seen, is the manual processes. So something's going on as you process your data. There's something manual, something you need to reconcile, some work that you need to do by hand, pretty much, right? I see that probably as the major risk. Another one would be the observability of the data pipelines. Fine, you automate some of your processes, but maybe you don't notice that certain processing fails. You don't notice it for a long time. Maybe there's lack of testing. That's certainly one of the major risks. But I think another one to think about is, can people actually find the information they need quickly, right? So that might be something for more specific to people just starting in an organization as opposed to people who've been there for a long time. I think that's probably touches more, not so much on data governance, but really on this whole idea of knowledge management, which is really completely different, not different, but connected discipline.
Yeah.
And if we think about knowledge management generally, what language do we use, right? So tacit knowledge versus explicit knowledge, perhaps collective versus personal knowledge. And then how do we manage that? What kind of things do we put in place so people can find information better? How can we make sure people can acquire knowledge easier, quicker, and so on? So perhaps Alex is a good tool that makes information more findable, right? So it's a single place where people can go, can find what they want, make sure it's used in the report correctly, or used wherever they want to use it, really.
A key use case of adopting Alex would be the transparency of data and how data no longer dies with, the one user. It's now in a tool. It's available to everyone. If you want to understand how is this report put together, you can see the lineage and understand, what data went into that report. You understand where data came from, where it goes. You don't have to chase up users. It's in a central space, and that can then be, your source of truth instead of having to chase down employees within your organization.
So coming out of that discussion, we now have two questions to pose to ourselves. Question 1, how does Alex help with the timeliness of data and impact of understanding change? Question 2, how do we address risk, check for breaches, and easily identify and remediate issues? Let's start by looking into our Alex data catalog. I'll begin with a critical business term called credit score. Here we can see its governance details, which include its ownership, stewardship, its own definition, and more. By scrolling down to the rich description here, I can see these images and a further breakdown of what credit score means within my organization. As I examine credit score here, I notice that there's this tag, and it's tagged as sensitive. This means that it has an encryption control applied to it as it's sensitive data. To understand this control, I can navigate to the related to section, and I can see those data controls that are applied. By clicking into the data encryption control here, we can read into its details. So this control ensures that sensitive data, like credit score, is protected through encryption, safeguarding it from unauthorized access. And within the Alex Business Glossary, I can gain this understanding, and I can see that this control is related to credit score. Now, if I navigate back to credit score, I can open up its business data flow using this rich text button. Now in this view, we can see that credit score is used and flows through our business process. Here we can see how credit score is applied throughout our different business applications. So flowing through the reporting application, finance governance application, we can see it has its own application there, as well as the enterprise data warehouse and the EWH application here. Now within the EWH, we can see that this credit score data element splits off to payment history and credit utilization ratio. Now, if I open up payment history, so using the DLS hierarchical view, it allows me to expand on each of these different group bys here. Now, within the data element of payment history, I can see that there is a data control, and that data control is the data encryption check that we just looked at. So again, this business data flow illustrating the flow and protection of data across our systems. Next, I'll perform an import to mock up our scanner. The scanner will detect a breach where a table does not meet the encryption control requirements. So let's see this in action now. So in this case, I'll perform an import. So what our Alex data profile scanner will do is it will run against the checks that are put into place. Now it'll find any assets that do not meet that check. So in this case, do not meet that encryption check, that control that we've put in place. What it will do is then flag that asset as it's breached. So let's see how that'll look within the Alex catalog. We'll see that I have 4 new notifications. I have my 2 workflow notifications and 2 task notifications. Let me click on that. So I have a high risk investigation. So Alex has now told me there is a risk assessment on payment history and a risk assessment on credit score. By coming back to my critical business term, opening up that business data flow, taking a look at credit score, I can see it's now been flagged with this new icon. It's letting me know that this credit score is impacted. As I walk through my business data flow again and expand these hierarchies, coming down to the EWH here, the enterprise warehouse, I can see that payment history is the asset at the source that has been flagged as well. So this view showing me that payment history is the source of the impact, and to the far right, credit score is ultimately what's impacted. Now, we know through this glossary page of the critical business term, when we had a look at that related to section, that this credit score will be impacting another critical report called credit evaluation. So that profile scanner has run, has flagged these assets as at now they've breached their control, they are now at risk. We have been notified within Alex and will now take the necessary steps to go ahead and remediate this issue. So if I just click through to our workflow here, we can see that risk assessment workflow and investigate those steps and procedures that need to take place before we can rectify this issue. So now we'll have the correct users assigned to go and remediate this. So by addressing these breaches properly, we ensure that our data remains secure and compliant with government policies. So in conclusion, Alex plays a crucial role in enhancing the timeliness and understanding of data changes. By addressing risks proactively, checking for breaches, and identifying issues swiftly, we can maintain robust data governance and security.
No, thanks so much for sharing those capabilities of Alex, Roberto. I think just from watching that ties in very well the conversation that we're having, Eugene, about how to make it easier for stewards to actually work with the data that they have, understand what they have, and avoid breaches and avoid those fines that we've been talking about. So we encourage our audience today watching to reach out to us via our website to find out a little bit more or get a personalized demonstration and get the full experience. Eugene, it's been an absolute pleasure to have your insights and to share your experience with us. Do you have any final nuggets of wisdom or any parting thoughts to the audience that you'd like to share with those tuning in?
I think the key to success in implementing data governance and data quality, and that's probably what distinguishes organizations that do it well and organizations that don't do it so well, is start with a very specific use case, find your stakeholder, and make sure that you start small, think of some target state, but start small and iterate, right? In doing that, make sure that you make as much use of accelerators of any sort. If you think about different organizations, say different banks, it's very likely that the set of critical data elements that they have will be roughly similar. So it makes sense to start with existing sets of data, start with the use cases, and iterate. The style of thinking, the sort of iterative approach to it is what probably don't be dogmatic, I suppose.
Yeah, don't be dogmatic. I like that. That's a wrap for our session today on how to make data quality conversations tangible. We really appreciate having you, Eugene, on board. And for those watching and interested in working with Eugene on data quality works, do reach out to him on LinkedIn. and check out Data Quality Works as well.
Every consultant, me included, by the way, in the past, they kept going like, okay, well, you know, the value and the value and the risk. And a lot of people, when you talk to them about risk, they say, oh, well, you know, where's the value of data? And I think my sort of controversial statement is that as a data governance manager, I actually don't care. Businesses will find value in their data, either with the help of analytics teams or on their own. My job as a data governance manager and my job as Data Quality Works is just to make sure that the data is of high quality, whatever the definition of high is for a stakeholder and the use case. You know, I might have an opinion about where the value of data is for a small bank versus a charity versus, you know, something else. But it's really not my business. I just need to make sure it's of high quality, and that's where the value is.
Yeah.
And I think the language of quality, it really does tie the language of value and the language of risk together. You know, if data is insufficient quality, you have the risk and you have the fines. If data is not the right quality, you can't go and do your ML and AI and, well, you can't do reporting even, do you?
So listen up, guys. Part 2 is when we'll talk about this.